Hey everyone, welcome back to Group Therapy. I'm one of your hosts, licensed psychologist, Dr. Jessica Rabon.
I'm licensed psychologist, Dr. J.
And I'm licensed clinical social worker, Kristen Gingrich.
And I'm licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Kristen Casey.
Although we are all here together, today we're going to talk about loneliness. So settle in, take a seat, and welcome to Group Therapy. So last week we talked all about depression, and at the end of the episode, we left you with this question. What is something that you do that helps you cope with depressive symptoms? Y'all, we got so many great answers, so I just picked a few. First, we have playing outside with my dogs, reading, and watching my comfort shows.
Love it.
One sure thing that will always help ease my depression is going to the beach. And no, that did not come from Justin.
I was like, wait, who said that?
Go for a hike or hitting the gym. I usually give myself about an hour to cry, scream, etc., and feel uncomfortable emotions as long as it isn't harmful to me or anyone else.
Okay. I love that.
That one's me.
And then the last one I wanted to highlight, this person says, I take pictures of everything that brings me the tiniest shed of joy, no matter how random or little.
Yo.
Love that. So wholesome.
Yeah, so like I said, we got so many great responses, so make sure to head over to our Instagram to read all the others. Maybe you'll get some ideas of how you can help your depressive symptoms as well. So as we jump into the episode, I want to ask you all, how often do you all feel lonely, and what is that experience like? Like, how can you tell you're feeling lonely?
It's going to sound like weird. I don't know how else to describe it, but I feel sometimes, well, not a lot of the time, but I feel sometimes like almost like an intellectual loneliness just with the job that we do, because I can't tell anybody about what we do all day. So I kind of feel like I'm holding all of these like secrets, because we are. And then I can't like share that with anybody. So I feel lonely just in the experience of being a therapist sometimes. I don't know if you could relate to that, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
I frequently feel lonely I feel connected and lonely at the same time because a lot of my friends are distance. And I consistently just connect with them via text or like that. I have a physical loneliness. Like I'm always, talking with my friends, but like, I'm not seeing them. And I have a couple friends like, here locally, but it's like there's a difference there too as well. Where, I am connected often, but still feel that sense of like, wow, cool.
Gosh, I relate hard to what both the Kristens just dropped. I'm a very extroverted person. And I think the role of a therapist, like K10 was saying, you give a lot of energy and it doesn't flow back in the way the dynamic is set up. It's not the same. You can have great therapeutic relationship, but being a content creator and being a private practice therapist are oddly both really isolating, because I don't interact with many people in sort of a colleague way. And so I jump on this podcast with y'all. Like most things I do are completely by myself. And just to add to that, I feel like for me, a big aspect is like group interaction that I miss, which is why I always look forward to hanging out with y'all on the podcast for real, because I feel like I have a lot of intimate individual connections in my life, but not like the group hang interactions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can agree with that in the capacity that like, all of my friends who know each other, are all distant. Versus the friends that I know who are local, they don't know each other. Right. So like to be like, hey, y'all, let's go get dinner. I feel more awkward of pulling 6 people who have no idea who each other is. And I'm the common denominator. And so I get that group thing because it's definitely different. I mean, I started that new job and it's primary. I'm working from home by myself right now. And coming from a very, very team based where I was working with 12, 15 people. I'm like, oh, I haven't spoken to anyone but myself today.
Wild.
Isn't it so weird to think about? Like, because I work from home too, and I'm home all day. And my friends who have like jobs where they go in person, they're like, you've been in the house for like 3 days straight. I'm like, no, I'm doing stuff. I'm not just like isolating. And they're like, you are though. And I'm like, I guess I am, like theoretically. Yeah.
They're like, please leave the compound of your home. Take a walk.
Jess, what about you?
Yeah, I relate to everything y'all said. I think where I feel lonely the most, because I work in a hospital, I work in a team, I'm around people all the time, but I am the only psychologist in both of my roles. So like every other psychologist that works for my hospital does something very different from me. So like, even though I work in a team, I'm kind of in my own island as the only psychologist. Even though I can reach out to other psychologists, they're not in my role. So I think that's probably how I feel lonely the most. Like historically, and we can probably get into this later, like when my depression was worse, things like that, my loneliness really showed up as like disconnection. Like I had people around me, but like I just felt very disconnected and alone. But now, so it's more related to work.
I felt that way when I worked in primary care because I was like the only psychologist in a primary care unit. And it felt like it was weird, like it was fun consulting, but it's like the verbiage that we use isn't always the verbiage that like nurses use or other medical professionals. So I felt like, does anybody get me? Does anybody understand me? Even though we're all working as a team, it did feel quite isolating.
Yeah, it makes me think for all the listeners out there of like, can we define what loneliness is compared to social isolation, compared to solitude? Can we put out those definitions?
I mean, when I think of loneliness, it's really like a psychological state of feeling or being alone. Like you don't physically have to be alone. You can be surrounded by other people, but it's that like psychological state of feeling like you're alone. Can you use the word alone in the definition of loneliness now that I just said that?
Yeah.
Of course you can. There's no rules.
No rules.
When you said that, all I could think of Jack's mannequin, dark blue. It's like, do you ever feel alone in a crowded room?
Crowded room.
Mm-hmm.
K10 has no idea what we're talking about because she has probably never listened to Jack's mannequin in her life.
I could relate to whatever the line was. Mannequin what? Like what? What are you talking about? I'm like, is this getting dark? Like what's going on right now?
Unless K10 has never had an emo phase ever in her life.
If I had an emo phase, I don't know how that would have gone. But yeah, when I think, hey, the future is just screaming for emo Kristen, right? But when I think literally screaming, when I think of loneliness versus solitude, I think about solitude could also be with other people, but you feel this sense of calmness and you're not really feeling a sense of like angst in a way, but you could also feel solitude alone as well. I don't know what y'all think about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like solitude is intentionally taking that state of being alone. I know we're going to get into it, but many people who are more introverted have moments of solitude throughout their day to just get re-energized and re-grounded. But that's very different than social isolation, which is just having a lack of social relationships, social roles, social connection, and like infrequent social interaction, which again is something sort of measurable, but can have more of a negative connotation to it. Where usually when we talk about solitude, it doesn't. It's more like short time bursts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think of solitude honestly as more positive in a way. Like K10, I think you used like the word calm. Like I can think of times where I've definitely felt a sense of solitude, but didn't feel alone, like intentional, I'm just going to take 5 minutes to myself, or like going on a walk out in nature, bringing nature from last week's episode. Good for your depression. And feeling a sense of solitude, even though I'm alone, I don't feel lonely. So
can I drop some scary stats from the Surgeon General before we divulge? And I know this is really in vogue right now because the U.S. Surgeon General just released this whole big collection of research about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. Very interesting, really easy to read. I don't think it's like above people's head per se, but this is just a couple lines which makes us think. So the big takeaway here is loneliness and social isolation increase the risk for premature death by 26 and 29% respectively. More broadly, or the way like a lot of news articles are grabbing this because it sort of is relatable. Lacking social connection can increase risk of premature death as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day.
Yo, what?
just to like a tangible way to be like, what are you talking about? Like if you're having this lack of social connection, it can be equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day as it relates to your premature death.
Wow.
So now that everyone's completely scared.
I feel like I'm like rethinking my entire life right now. But I think like, you know how we talk about how social support is so helpful for depression? I'm like realizing like just the gravity of that, you know?
Because that's when you said that, the first thing that came into my mind was, I wonder how suicidality plays into that. And that loneliness that many individuals who struggle with suicidality feel, and how that plays a role in that statistic.
Not
totally,
because this is not an episode on suicide, but if you think of Joyner's model of suicidality, where you have the perceived burdenness and then thwarted belongingness, so feeling a sense like you don't belong, in combination with acquired capacity, so like access to means, like he is probably the leading model of suicide research, and feeling like you don't belong is a huge risk factor for suicidality.
Gosh, and then I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the need to belong. Like it's like all connected. It's so crazy. Oh my gosh.
And then it leads us to like what is happening in the now. So one more takeaway from the Surgeon General report, which I thought was super interesting, was like over the last 2 decades, there's been a decrease of 20 hours per month spent engaging with friends. And the sharpest decline is within young people ages 15 to 24. It's down nearly 70% over 2 decades, comparing research. So 70% decrease if you're 15 to 24 in engaging with friends.
Oh my God.
What's going on?
I was going to say, why do you think
Social
that is?
media.
Yeah.
Social media. Because I don't know how they categorized that, but I mean, as somebody that works with teens, or even like, I mean, KB, I was just talking about this. Like, we all met on social media. Like, we all have friends on social media. And I've noticed with a lot of my teens, especially since the pandemic, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And, you know, some chose to stay in online school for various reasons. So then most of their social connection is online. They're not getting out and socializing with people, or even my teens that go to in-person school, their socialization is during the school hours of 8 to 3. And then they're going home, playing video games, connecting with people online. But, and we know from the research that yes, although social media can be great for social connection and feeling like you belong, especially in, you know, areas maybe you, Justin, I'm going to use you as an example. You have a rare medical illness and you need connection in that way, or you're a marginalized individual in a predominantly cishet white upper class community, for example. The connection can be really great online, but it's not the same as in-person connection.
It's so wild to think about, because I even think about just growing up and how different it was growing up for me than it was like my clients who were like Gen Z right now. I was outside all day. And then when the streetlights came on, like that is when I came home, no phone or anything, no opportunity to connect online. So all you had was like the general physical vicinity of who was available, you know? And I think maybe that was just our way of, at least my way, I'll speak for myself, my way of socializing, growing up in New York and New Jersey. But I do wonder if back then, if I had a phone, I mean, I'd be on my phone. I wouldn't be outside, you know?
Totally. And I think social media is a part of the greater landscape of just technology. And now we're getting right on the precipice of AI that's blowing up my feed every day. Of course, I'm going to bring it up, but it's crazy. We have less and less of a need to get into a group and interact with people. Because how many things can we do today in 2023 from our phone, from home? Like a bigger question is, why do you need to leave your home? Like that, it seems like a wild question to ask, but I think it's at the core of what we're experiencing. Technology is just making it too easy for us to stay within the confines. And that's why I appreciate the Surgeon General saying this is actually a big issue, is as much as technology can be helpful, as cool as social media can be and can also be helpful in many aspects, limited social interaction or letting technology or AI do work and prevent us from connecting is not good for us. And it's like we're coming to a big head here with tech and AI versus what is actually good for our human biology. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but it's fascinating to watch.
Well, that just made me laugh because I literally just like an hour ago, I hit submit on my grocery delivery order that'll deliver to my house because I don't want to deal with people.
Oh my God.
In the grocery store.
And I get it. I understand. And
I think it's
what's the cost is what I think about.
I don't even need to talk to the delivery driver. I've already tipped them. I click leave it at my door. And so I don't even need to, I just got to go get it when they drop it off.
I'm like really resonating with everything that y'all are saying. And I keep thinking, like, what would the benefit be of leaving the house, right? Like, because I work from home, just like Kristen now. Justin, I think you're hybrid and stuff like that. But I literally don't need to leave my house for anything. I could stay here all day. My dogs have a backyard. Don't even have to walk them outside. And so for me, I have to make really intentional choices to leave the house. And I think sometimes what causes loneliness for me and even the clients that I work with is you're almost like not an active participant in your life because you're on your phone and it's giving you the facade that you're interacting, and you're interacting with friends and family and stuff like that. But it hits so different than spending time with someone, having a conversation, making eye contact, feeling the vibe of an in-person interaction. It's just so different than online.
I also think the quarantine during the pandemic really impacted us getting even more comfortable with doing things online. I mean, I even think of like, did any of us do telehealth before the pandemic or know how to do it? You did? No. Justin?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like, I think I had done a total of like 8 sessions.
Okay.
But it wasn't completely unfamiliar, but I had started testing it.
Yeah. So like, doctor's appointments are now online,
Right.
School, like everything. And I mean, grocery delivery was always a thing online, but then people started doing pickup more and we got comfortable. I mean, okay, I'll speak for myself. Got more comfortable, staying in the house, not socializing. Yeah, we like missed it, but we were forced to learn to adapt. And for many of us, we just kind of have stuck in that pattern.
Yeah. Well, and I do think like there is benefits in some capacity of, being distant. Like if it wasn't for things like social media or that, I mean, none of us would know each other. There is the benefits, but on the other hand, like I have met every single one of you in person and the vibe hits different in person. Absolutely.
Like you were way weirder than I ever thought you'd be. So like,
have you
someone said it.
Like,
somebody
said you? Like, ma'am.
I am a whole train
We all
wreck.
sat around that campfire together. Okay.
Yo, don't bring up the campfire. I'm so traumatized. Anyways, that made me feel a lot less lonely though, meeting you in person for sure.
But that's like one of the things is like, when there is something to be said about connecting face to face with a person. Is it the end all be all of that relationship? Absolutely not. You can still have, amazing friendships, relationships, that type of stuff from a distance. And they can still be just as functional as, the person that you see every other day or even closer. Like I always said, like there are people I'm closer with that I've never actually met in person than I am with someone that I see frequently. But there just is something to be said of snuggling up to K10 in a hotel bed.
I was snuggling up to you.
That may be
you're
true.
not a physical touch person.
That is
Anyways.
accurate. But there's just something to be said about that piece of connection in regards to loneliness.
Yeah. I sometimes think too about like, Justin hit on this before, like introverts and extroverts. And I don't know the answer to this, but I'm wondering if there's like, if more extroverts feel lonely or if more introverts feel lonely, like the concept of loneliness. My initial hypothesis is that extroverts might feel that because they really yearn for that, you know, that connection and not the connection, but just the social interaction. But I'm not sure.
I was going to say, we could take a poll on
We could. Yeah, that's actually
from
a good
our
idea.
group members, but also on here. Because, I mean, KBI, you consider yourself extroverted, correct? Or
are you an ambivert?
I'm like, I can fake extrovert real well.
So I feel like you're an ambivert.
But that's where I sit too, is I think introverts struggle more with loneliness because they struggle at finding the energy or the wanting to put themselves out there.
I could see that either way. Because I think you're right. I think that would be my argument of why it might be introverts, but my argument for extroverts would be I require a lot of social interaction. Like a lot. Like there are weeks I'm barely making it to Friday for my pickleball crew and then social happy hour out. Like that's how depleted I feel through my isolated week that I'm like, thank God for pickleball and happy hour Friday. Like, and I'm like just trying to soak in my friends, everybody who's there. Like it really feels like I'm not trying to exaggerate. By the time Friday comes, I feel like I'm like chugging the water of social interaction. Like, please, I need it so bad.
They just had a pickleball tournament around the corner from my house.
And not to, okay, I won't go too far about this, but I think one of the things that happens with technology, and I'll relate it to my pickleball quickly, is there's been so many happenstance interactions of me going to these same courts every Friday to play pickleball. And I think about that concept and how it just doesn't really exist online a little bit. Like maybe you're in the same like gaming group and someone else joins. Like I get that. But the in-person, it lends itself easier for someone to be like, hey, what's up? Like you're sitting right next to each other waiting for a court to open. I just don't know if online parallels the same. Like it's just easier to have happenstance interactions in person and learn about people in your community.
And those are sometimes the most meaningful. Just that like really brief interaction. I had to go to FedEx the other day, and the FedEx person who works there is so funny. And I was like, I'm going to this FedEx because I know he's going to crack a joke and it's going to be like, I was looking forward to that interaction. Right. Whereas if I were to just like do something online, like I would have never had that. He made a really funny joke, but like I would have never had that interaction, you know? So I think you're right with that. I mean, I think sometimes we think about the big events, like seeing friends or like having that intentional time. But I think the journey in between that is really important too. And I'm just relating it to loneliness and how you might not feel as alone potentially if you have those interactions. I could also see it on the other end where it might reinforce that, but.
Yeah, especially if the overall like mechanism is biologically we have prospered as a species because having your community, your tribe allowed you to grow, get food, exchange ideas, like safety, like all the above. And then again, that intersection with now technology makes it so you do not need people. But what if, from a psychological mental health perspective, we have fast forwarded too far, but we actually do still need that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think about that disparity.
Because, I mean, just as humans, we are just wired for connection.
And
again, some people, like Justin, are a golden retriever and wired to run up to every single person and say hello. And then there are other people who don't need as much, but we're still wired to have some form of connection. Even if someone says, I am the most introverted as introverted. Like you watch these shows like Alone, and they literally drop you off by yourself for 90 days.
That show is
nuts. It does take a toll. Now that's an aggressive difference, but still, like, when you don't have, even just basic small interactions with the FedEx guy or things like that, like, it does impact us. Even if we say it doesn't, it does.
Yeah. It's wild too, because I think of like, not warning signs. What's the word I'm looking for? Like predisposing factors for loneliness and all of that. I even think about like what factors might contribute to loneliness, or maybe like particular mental health disorders or something like that. Any thoughts?
Well, to go to our episode last week, I think of depression a lot, like that social withdrawal, the isolation. The other thing I think of a lot is like life transitions, like a move or starting a new job. I mean, KB, I might be able to speak to this, but just, I remember finishing internship. I don't know if Justin and K10, you had this experience, and like I transitioned to postdoc, but I had this like weird like time off, which was much needed. But I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't have any friends here. Like I'm alone. And like, yes, I have my husband, but like he's working and things like that. And so I think of also like those transitions, especially if it involves being in like a new place or new situation.
Oh yeah. I definitely felt like that after internship. I also felt the loneliest I've ever felt was in grad school. It's the weirdest thing, because I was in like a cohort situation and I had all these amazing people who were so intelligent and smart and really funny and nice and all this. And I also felt so lonely in my family because nobody knew what it was like to go to grad school or what it felt like. So I felt this intense feeling of like, oh my God, nobody gets it. And in that, I actually felt really lonely. So I think loneliness can even come from a perceived, people might not understand me, or, I'm going through something that's different than other people. And I'm alone in that. But yeah, after internship, I was like, what am I doing? What's going on? Like,
What's going on?
I just didn't know what's going on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you do, again, like life changes, like that does have an impact. I mean, again, I left a job that I've been at for 7 years where I had a solid team. And here's the thing. We all hope that we're going to stay in contact. I use it as the high school analogy. We all hoped we would still be friends with all of our high school friends. And are we friends with all of our high school friends? We might have like 1 or 2 people we're still connected with. And I would say probably like right now, they're out of the huge group of friends I had in high school, I'm probably still decently connected to like 3 people.
Yeah.
And that's like, yeah.
For me, it's 1. Yeah.
Yeah. 1 for me.
And it doesn't mean that I didn't care about my friends then, or that I didn't have, good intentions. But, those transitions become really hard. Whether you transition a job or transition out of grad school, because a lot of times when your social connections are built around one specific thing, and that is what you guys are connecting on. When that thing goes away, the question then comes in is, what do you have in common outside of that one solid thing?
That's hard.
And that is a really hard thing to come to terms with when you do life transitions like that. Because again, it's not that those individuals were not important to you, that you didn't care about them or anything like that. But it just means, that things have changed.
It's totally true. And it makes me think, whether it's like for ourselves or it's like for clients, like what do we do about when things have changed and we are lonely? Like, what are the interventions? Where does your mind go?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is exactly what you said before, Justin, about frequenting the same place over and over and over again. Like finding your hobby or finding the thing that you really, really like and just going all in. So for example, if you're really into pottery and you could afford it, going to a pottery class. If you're really into gardening, going to like, a gardening class, like whatever it is, joining a Facebook group. I know they're hit or miss, for the hobby that you have, and really just being consistent and doing it for you. And then usually those connections will follow. But I think for some people, we're so focused on the outcome. We're like, we want friends, we want connection. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to kind of like figure out how to do that besides downloading like Bumble BFF. I've done that before. Mm-hmm. It actually worked out really well when I moved to Phoenix. But those are usually the two things that I suggest for people to do is like put yourself out there. If you're introverted, it's harder because you don't really have the mental space or energy to do it. And then also just kind of coming to terms with like, you also have a relationship with yourself too. And that's really valuable. And of course you feel lonely within that, but it really looks so different for everybody. But those are the main things that I usually go for with clients.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would add to that, I try to encourage my clients, and it's slightly different working exclusively with teens and children, is, optimizing the experiences they're already having for social interaction. So like if they have a job, are there people there that you think are kind of cool that maybe you could ask to, hang out outside of work or grab coffee or dessert or whatever after work? Are there people in your class that maybe you haven't talked to, but you're like, they seem cool, or like I noticed that they, wore a band t-shirt that I really like, and trying to make connections already within the situations that you're in that naturally bring out social relationships. So I'm going to be honest, I don't have a good transition. But Justin, were you going to say something?
I had like 4 transitions throughout the last 5 minutes, and then we just kept going, and I was like, damn it.
Damn.
It's okay.
Someone said something about being valuable. I was like, you want to know what else is valuable? The polls.
Oh, the Google Scholar Shorts.
Oh, shit.
Ooh. Yeah, you messed up. It's fine. It's fine.
The polls are coming too.
Yeah, the polls are coming too.
You're just foreshadowing.
What else is valuable?
You're good.
The Google Scholar Shorts.
Whoa.
That was solid.
What a transition.
Solid transition, KBI. Okay. So we've talked today a lot about, technology. And I think a lot of times because of our group members, we really talk about millennials, Gen Z, but one group of people we don't talk about a lot is older adults. So I want to pose this question to you all. How do you think COVID impacted older adults with regard to loneliness?
That fucked them up.
Oh,
I think really bad.
Like
real
bad.
Yeah. I could just speak for, yeah.
Especially older adults who were in facilities like nursing homes and things like that. Like I remember seeing like some of our family members being like, we stood outside the window with signs because we haven't seen them in 6 months. And like grandma is like 92 years old. Like, I think it fucked them up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, two of my grandparents, they just did not handle it well. And I was grateful at the time to have all 4 grandparents alive during COVID. But yeah, my grandpa was calling me when he was still alive. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, I just talked to you like an hour ago. It's the same shit. Like, I don't even know what to say at this point. Like, I don't know. I got him a bird feeder. I'm like, I don't know what to do for you, Pops. Like, I'm sorry. Like, but I think that they were really, really used to the in-person interaction. And I think it hit them harder than anybody, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the paper we're going to talk about is a systematic review and meta-analysis of looking at loneliness and social isolation among older adults during COVID-19. So a little background. So if we're looking pre-pandemic, prevalence of loneliness among the older population was estimated between 5 to 10% across Australia, Northern Europe, and North America, 10 to 18% in Southern Europe. And then in Asia, however, studies had a much higher prevalence, with prevalence rates up to 30%. So that's all pre-pandemic. So in this systematic review, they did a pooled prevalence of loneliness. So looking at all the studies, and across all the studies, it was 28.6%. So thinking pre-pandemic for most countries was 5 to 10. And then they found that estimates were significantly higher for studies conducted 3 months or later into the pandemic versus the first 3 months. So over 30, average of 31.3% rates of loneliness if the study was conducted 3 months or later in the pandemic. So not only has there been a significant increase in loneliness from pre-pandemic times to during the pandemic, we also saw that older adults experience increased loneliness as the pandemic continued on. Oh my God. So exactly what you all thought. Probably for the reasons you thought.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors. I mean, one, we were told consistently that older adults were a high-risk category. So I remember us even saying, like, we would go see, you know, my sister-in-law, but, like, going and seeing Grammy? Absolutely not. We can't see Grammy. Yeah. She's 94. And then I think, you know, thinking of the older adults in our family, like, what was their technology usage? Mm-hmm. Did they eat, like, I know a lot of the adults and like the older adults in our family, you know, didn't even know how to use Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, like, you know, we're all doing Zoom cocktail hours as millennials, and they don't know, and they're not sure how to, and we're not able to go and set it up for them.
Yep.
Like we would normally. And so that, I mean, they had a lot of factors that definitely contributed to that make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I know we talked a little bit about how it increases mortality, which means it's usually associated with bad health outcomes generally.
Yeah.
But thinking of like more than 1 in 4 people and knowing how much loneliness increases depression and anxiety within mental health, it's astronomically hard to grasp that it like quadrupled as a result of the pandemic. And it makes me curious about what happened to the mortality of a lot of older adults who didn't get COVID, but just were dealing with the ramifications of feeling alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, you know one thing that never makes us feel alone?
The polls.
It's the polls. It's the polls. We love the polls because we feel connected. We collect a little data. I did a few open responses this time. Of course, we love reading your words. You're so eloquent and thoughtful in your responses. But let's just jump in. Question number 1. How often do you feel lonely each week? Most of the time, some of the time, only a little, or never. This is now. How often do people feel lonely in a week?
Some of the time.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Some of the time, 41%. Most of the time, 35%. Only a little, 19%. 4%, never. Wow. Those people are just, 4% of people are just engaged. I kind of set that question up for this next one, which was, to what extent did you feel lonely during the pandemic? Most of the time, some of the time, only a little, or never. What are your thoughts?
Ooh.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something really interesting happened here that I wouldn't have been able to predict.
Oh my gosh, wait.
Plot twist.
Hit us.
So most of the time did skyrocket. It was 35% in the one before. Now it's the top at 47%. But never went up from 4% to 6%. So
interesting.
There was
a little controversy.
So going back to our discussion about introversion, I'm wondering if the people that said never either are very introverted or have social anxiety, because I will say the most frequent diagnosis I discharged the beginning of the pandemic was my social anxiety kids, the ones that no longer had to go to school. They no longer had to like interact. Their mental health got so much better. And like, even on like a personal note, I mean, I still have to go to work because I work in a hospital. But honestly, a lot of my life didn't change during the pandemic because my husband and I are both introverted by nature. So, and then I was pregnant. So then that gave me a reason not to have to hang out with people.
just stayed home and read Google Scholar all pandemic.
Yeah, reading all these like journal articles. What
Just
the
saying.
fuck? Sometimes I like, sorry, I'm just reflecting on just this whole podcast and I'm like, who let us do this? You know what I mean? Like, this is so fun. I don't know.
They'll catch us and try to shut us down one day.
They will. Watch out.
To take it from our hands.
But yeah, I mean, a big increase. Almost half of our group members felt lonely during the pandemic versus now about 35%. So again, a big disparity. But I also asked the open-ended question of what contributes to your loneliness. We got a ton of responses, really, really good. One person working in a hospital during the pandemic, not being able to see family members, friends. How many different professions in the healthcare
It's tough.
Yeah.
was even more isolated during that. Another person says PTSD and trauma. That can make you feel lonely. Depression. Many people said depression, self-esteem, introversion. I isolate a lot when I feel overwhelmed. Lack of close relationships, chronic illness, moving to a new location, as Jess said before, living alone, not being able to meet my friends, some online characteristics there, my mental health, not having a good support system, but a lot of variation, right, in what can contribute to loneliness. Then I asked, what generation do you think is the most lonely? Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, or Baby Boomers?
Oh my gosh. I don't know what the group members said. Based on what Jess said, maybe boomers.
Well, so I feel like boomers are most like physically lonely, like lack the most connection. But I'm biased. I feel like millennials are the most lonely. Like we're all like former emo kids minus K10 that now like have big people jobs. And like, I don't know.
I feel like we're all just train wrecks a little bit, you know, so I get it. Maybe it's us. Yeah.
When you live through multiple unprecedented times,
But
does that to a person?
But Gen Z, in my opinion, they're like so ahead of the game with everything.
Oh,
so I feel
absolutely.
like, I don't know. I'm going with Gen Z. I'm going millennial.
So 49% of people said millennial, 22% Gen Z, 16% baby boomer, 13% Gen X.
Well,
You know, the stat I dropped earlier, a 15 to 24-year-olds reduced rate of interacting with friends is down 70%. It's Gen Z.
True.
Gen Z is the most lonely. So it's interesting. I would have to look deeper into how they categorize that. I think it's self-reported loneliness.
Yeah.
Which again is always the tough thing. Is like, is Gen Z just more open, or is there really this factor that they're spending a lot less time interacting with people?
Yeah.
Tough,
And
confounding variables there.
And what is interacting? Because I watch Gen Zs snap each other every 2 seconds. They got those snap scores up into the 1 millions.
Yeah.
Same
they're
with
up there.
K10.
No, mine's not that high. Mine's not that high.
Miss.
Let's see. Well,
But like,
Mine's
but
up
again,
low.
like, would they classify that as connection? Or, I mean, would we even classify it as connection? But
Like, is it? Yeah.
So
I
it's
sure
guess
they-
it depends on the individual. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they used self-reported loneliness because it has to be that feeling that's internal, right? That they're, yeah. Because I agree with you. Of like, how much does the snap fill your cup of social interaction? I bet there's variability there.
for all our group members, K10 snap score is 214,145.
See, that's not that bad. That's not even that high. They're going to be like, oh, she's just a casual snapper. Like, they're not going to say
What's
anything.
your snap score?
My snap score is 38,227.
Well,
Let's
yours
see.
sounds high to me, K10.
It's not. It's just compared to just
Justin's is 17,165.
That's
Okay, we have
because half
three.
of those snaps came to our group snap.
Oh, at
Kristen's?
least.
That's, let's see, Kristen.
Is the snaps how many snaps you sent?
Kristen doesn't even have a snap score.
Okay, the N is 4 for our group members. Okay, the N is 4. Just it's not generalizable. I'm fine.
wait.
I promise.
Hold up. Oh, just kidding. There's two. I have two Kristens. Kristen's snap score is 55,911.
Oh.
I mean,
Still not
K10.
200.
So Justin's
Still not
is the
200 and
lowest.
some thousand.
Goodbye.
but second highest.
Goodbye.
Now I'm convinced K10's like some of the teens I see who are like doing the snap in therapy session. They think I don't see. They're like, yeah, oh my gosh.
I'm not even gonna lie. I've definitely snapped myself in session. Totally illegal. Not okay. Don't do that with your therapist, please. Yeah. And I was like, therapy, like, and I just like,
Good for you.
Gotta keep my snap streaks going.
Reduce that stigma. Reduce stigma.
reduce the stigma.
I'm like, hey, let them know.
If Gen Z wants a snap score to reduce loneliness, I'm all about it. Okay. Like it's fine.
I like that.
You know what else I
No
like?
one else.
You had to. You had to do
That was
it.
so good.
It's the group member questions.
Let's go.
Best.
Oh my
The
gosh,
best.
those ones. Guys, I feel like I haven't done group member questions in like 3 months.
Oh, we know.
Because you weren't here for like 2 weeks.
We're well aware.
And we
Don't make
just
her
like
feel
skipped. And actually, no, one of those was because we popcorned it. So you probably haven't done them in 2 months.
Yeah. I'm
We're
like,
gonna
I
do-
literally sat here and I was like, when what the hell was the last time I did group member questions? Like,
Well, I'm no better. I haven't done group member questions in a while because I've been out a lot.
Social
I'm in the
loafing's
same
real.
boat.
Justin, we're just carrying this podcast, I guess.
I feel it on my back.
Your-
Is where I
your
feel it in
back's
my
hurt?
body. I feel it right here.
I feel nice. Yeah. Like,
I'm just stuck on that you called K10 out for social eloping.
I'm calling you out too. You're included.
fuck.
You're including. You don't like the word loafing?
I mean, I am an Irish goodbye type of person where I just like disappear.
Hey, I just like that if I'm a loafer, y'all still accept me. That's all I care about. I'm cool with it. Like,
True.
thanks for having me.
Oh gosh. Well, we had some pretty good questions this week. Some of them are very thought-provoking. So we're going to start off with the first one. It's from Anonymous. And they just said, is there a difference between feeling lonely and actually being lonely?
So my gut says yes. But now I don't know.
Telling me yeah.
Well, because in my mind, I'm like, is there a difference between feeling lonely and actually being alone? Yes.
Oh.
But feeling lonely and actually being lonely, I guess yes. Like the feeling, because you can feel lonely and still be around a bunch of people connected. And actually being lonely, I conceptualize as like physically being alone or lacking that connection. Now I'm confusing myself.
Yeah, I agree. I some of this is semantics, but we haven't like dove into this like even deeper. But the reason why you could be around a lot of people and have a high self-reported, of loneliness are for reasons you're probably already thinking. Trauma, right? Or low self-esteem. And I know we mentioned depression, high anxiety. A lot of mental health factors can contribute to us reporting high loneliness, but having plenty of social interaction. And that gets into vulnerability and how we interact, the quality of our social interaction. I mean, there's a lot of factors we'll get into, but maybe I replaced in the question of, is there a difference between feeling lonely and actually being alone?
Yeah.
Is maybe how I heard it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Haley from the USA says, how can I help with feeling less lonely? I feel that I put in the work. I go to therapy. I recently started group therapy. I try being social. What else can I do? Thank you for your time.
My first thought is like reflecting on maybe what are some of the causes of feeling alone. Like you go to therapy, you're doing group therapy. You said you try to be social. Like, are those social interactions fulfilling to you? Because there are times I'm social and the social interactions are not fulfilling at all. So I'm still going to feel lonely. So I know K10 and Justin already brought this up. But, are there certain hobbies that you really enjoy, that you enjoy doing the activity and it is social by nature? So you can form those like deeper connections that are more meaningful. Is it trauma related or depression related? And do you need to address those things to help you feel less alone?
I love K10's suggestion earlier of like starting with like, what do you enjoy to do? And finding groups of people to align in that. But I think one thing that we haven't talked about that there's good research to support is doing any kind of philanthropy. Like there's good research to back like giving time and energy for good, especially when it's aligned with your values. Those tend to be really high social endeavors and a lot of self-reported connection, forming new relationships. So doing that kind of philanthropy work, I know there's so many, usually just like all you have to do is like look up your local town or city and there'll be like a list of organizations like, hey, we would love to have you show up to this and help us with that. And again, if you just go off the research, people tend to report like high social connection and feeling good. But I do think it has to align with your values.
Yep.
I agree with that. When I became an EMT, that's the main reason why I became one. I actually volunteered on my local first aid squad because I was like super lonely, had no friends at that point because I kind of broke away from some of my friends from high school. Love y'all. I just wasn't into the scene, so I had to kind of make some life changes. And I met some of the coolest people on the ambulance. And I still reflect on that. I'm like, we were doing this thing for a common cause and we got to know each other and we established like lifelong friendships. Like I still talk to these people. They're amazing. So you could, some first aid squads and even fire departments will take on volunteers or ride-alongs as well. If you're looking to give back to the community, another option is any sort of homeless shelter, soup kitchens, churches, if you're religious and stuff like that could also be a good option.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Michaela from California says, how do you recommend fighting against isolating yourself, especially when it feels kind of good to isolate, even when you know it won't help? I love your podcast and thank you so much for your hearts and educating us along the way.
Oh, so sweet.
What are your thoughts, KBI?
I think it's always fine. I think it's always a balance. I mean, yeah. We do have to fight against the want to isolate, absolutely, but we don't want to throw ourselves into something that's going to, set us off. So, like, I'm not going to take someone who wants to isolate and throw them into a party of 300 people. But instead, sometimes it's finding sometimes my favorite moments with connecting with people are especially on days where I want to connect, but I also don't, is finding the people that you can do nothing with. That you can sit and throw on a TV show and just hang out together. And it's not where you don't have to be on per se, but that you're still connecting in a way, but it's maybe not as draining.
I like that. I even think too, sometimes I'll text my friends and I'll be like, I don't really want to talk, but I just want to exist with you. Can I come over? And we can just scroll on our phones together and just be near each other. And literally, if you set the expectation, usually people will be like, oh my God, yeah, come over. It's totally fine.
Because that was a common question we got from a lot of people. Nene from Ohio and then says, I need to isolate for long periods of time after being around a group, even one person. Is this normal? And then Anonymous said, how do you combat loneliness when you need a lot of alone time to recharge? And I think that's sometimes the difference, with individuals who might be introverted, and feeling, the weight of connection while also still wanting it.
Mm-hmm. That's hard. I think it's really doing inventory and figuring out what works for you. Mm-hmm. I'm very, 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 I'm painfully introverted. But if I'm out with a group, I could kind of put it on for an hour or two and then I lose steam. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that the point of loneliness for me is not only with the work, but I also feel this intellectual or spiritual or existential loneliness too, where I think sometimes I can't talk about the things that I really want to talk about with people that will really make me feel that deep connection. And sometimes I'm like, should I drop this bomb on somebody? I just want to talk about life after death. And they're not ready for it, So I have to really be mindful about what I need. And then I'm able to kind of act on it. So I think really trying to take an idea of what do I need right now for this particular element of loneliness? Because loneliness can change form over time too.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue for both Nene and Anonymous that if you are exhausted after social interaction, if you need that alone time to recharge, doing so is going to be in your best interest. And I would question, like, do you actually feel lonely during that time? Because I know for me, when I need alone time to recharge, it's a very different feeling than loneliness. Like, I'm actively choosing to take this time by myself to calm down, rest, recharge, re-energize, so then I can engage with other people. And I'm not saying that you can't feel lonely while doing that, but I think it's a different, I guess, intent because you are actually taking this time to do so. And going back to something K10 said about being painfully introverted, like, I was thinking about when we were in Maine and you and I both were like, we're done socializing. There's only 5 of us. And we like went upstairs and then we rested for like an hour and we both came back. And it's very different.
I'm a better person. I'm a better person when I recharge, you know?
Well, I mean, even from there, like when we were in Texas and I was like, we were literally laying in bed, scrolling our phones, not saying a damn word to each other.
It was like hours went by, like actual hours.
For like 2 hours because we had spent all morning out doing stuff. And I think that sometimes, you know, I think too, when I think of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go socialize for 5 hours. Sometimes, like, when you think of you then think of what the recovery time is going to be. And sometimes that can inhibit someone's want to actually then go and connect. Because they're like, I know that if I go and do this, I'm not going to be able to function. And I'm going to isolate myself even longer. So is it worth connecting for? Which then when you say no, well, yes, you may be making that choice. It still sucks because you're not connecting, and like maybe FOMO sets in, like, you know, all of that.
Yeah, it could come with a cost.
I would just like to reference 2 points. One, there's a lot of referencing of events that I was not invited to, and as being the most extroverted person you'll ever know in your life, I take that personally. And point number 2, which I agree with everything that's been said, but I have worked with clients where the question to ask yourself is it the need to recharge or is it the avoidance of feeling uncomfortable? Which, again, there are plenty of moments where you could recharge all weekend and next weekend will come. You're like, I need to recharge again. And there is that point where it's like, yes, new behaviors are uncomfortable, but I'm with you that everything's within a balance of like, therapeutically, sometimes we need a little shove to be like, I'm not going to feel comfortable in this volunteer group. You're right. But you probably won't 4 weekends from now either. Yeah. So there is that balance of we can use recharging as an excuse. Sometimes it's completely valid. Other times it's literally just avoidance.
Yeah. I think people are worried about gaining mastery and feeling confident. And that'll come with time.
Totes.
Well, K10, remember when we were in Florida? And Justin came to visit us. And like, once he left, we were like dead. Like, it was just too much. Like, we needed to just, like, we all went into our separate rooms and just ignored each other for the next 12 hours. Because
I don't remember that, actually. I remember, what I remember is me, Dave, and Justin missed the boat for the Uber. So we had a really nice connecting moment and we took bikes and we just biked along and met y'all when, you know, you were already eating. And we felt isolated and lonely in that. So, you know.
Just think about that as you sped away in your Uber, but that's okay.
We saw this really cool, what did we even see? What was it, like a big statue of something?
It was a bull, wasn't it? No, dragon.
It's the largest Pegasus statue.
I thought it was tripping. I was like, this can't be real.
Yo.
That's so solid. Oh, see, I brought up a trip that you were on, Justin.
Feel a little bit better about myself, but not a lot.
Well, a little bit enough. That's all you're getting.
I'll take it.
I know we touched upon this, but does anybody else have anything they wanted to add? So Alini from New Jersey just said during COVID, has loneliness increased among the public? And I think we talked about that. Absolutely, it has.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think like Jess was saying before, like all of us were saying before, I think it just really we had to kind of adapt in so many different ways. And in that, one of the consequences was feeling really alone or lonely or a sense of isolation because we couldn't go out or couldn't do anything. And then now I think it's just kind of people have felt okay about not leaving the house, like Justin was saying. And it's just kind of really difficult to sometimes even make an effort to do things outside of the house or, to connect with people because it feels so effortful sometimes. I'm only speaking for myself. If my friends are listening, I love you. I just don't want to hang out all the time.
Okay. So I'm going to read 2 questions because, again, they kind of go together, and I think that we have touched upon social media. But Kara from Arizona says, how much do you think the age of the internet and social media contributes to loneliness? By the way, love the podcast. And Caitlin from California says, social media was originally intended to create connections and decrease isolation. Do you think it has? Has it helped or hurt human connection in the long run?
The long run's hard to say, but I think the answer, especially to Caitlin out in California, is both. It is definitely both helped and hurt. And I know we've talked about that a number of times, but yeah, I very much know the ways, the connections I've made. Of course, you all are always going to be that example. But you can self-reflect for yourself. Like, think about this question. What valuable connections have you made, through social media, through technology that you have today? Meaning the ones you feel very close to. And then I sometimes think about what are the closest human interaction moments you've had in your life. I don't have a single one of those that are through social media or the internet or technology. Not one. And you might, and I'm not taking that away from you, but I use that as my own self-reflection to say there's something different about in person that is just, you could argue, maybe richer in the way it encodes in our memory. Maybe it's richer in the ways emotions are exchanged. But again, technology does lead to connections that you otherwise may not have. But I'm still on that side of thinking for the depth, I think in person will always be that. And again, maybe technology will evolve to the point where we won't know what's what. But until that happens.
Until AI takes over, right?
Just takes over and starts running this podcast.
We won't have to do any work at that point. Damn.
Nope.
But though, guys, imagine the day that we get to record this podcast in person.
I know.
I don't know if we're going to be able to hold it together. We're going to have to do a test run first and just throw that one out. Or maybe keep it for bloopers because I feel like when we all get together, it's going to be really fun.
I feel like it's just going to be another sleep episode of chaos.
Oh my God. That was like the only episode where I'm like, this is my time to shine.
In the morning. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Record at 3 a.m.
No, that's a hard no.
I'll be getting
Absolutely
up in
not.
the morning. KBI hasn't gone to bed yet. It's fine.
And Justin's on his 5th espresso, maybe. Who knows at this point.
It's about right.
Yeah, the sleep episode, I was like, this is my time to shine. It was an absolute chaotic episode. And I was like, I love this.
Best episode.
It was
and to
good.
this day, it is probably one of my favorites.
Agreed.
Yeah. It was wild.
Okay.
The only other thing I wanted to add that we haven't talked about with regard to social media and loneliness is that like comparison. So we've been talking about like social connection, but I also think social media can contribute to lack of connection. Like if we're looking at people and, we think, oh my gosh, they're going on all these great trips or they have like all of these things because we all know social media is a highlight reel, but even then we still find ourselves comparing. And that can definitely make us feel lonely or isolated. Like, we've probably done it before. You see, people you follow on these like trips with other creators or, people you follow and they're like, oh, you're having so much fun. And I'm sitting here and my friends are all in different states. Why am I not doing that? Or just like, I don't know, other forms of comparison. And I definitely think that can make us feel more lonely as well.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Just the perpetual face I make watching KBI on some trip. She just went on another trip and she's at some concert. I'm just, That's just the face I make perpetually.
muted.
And if you're listening to
Maybe
the
I keep
audio,
talking even though she's muted.
We can
good.
talk shit. She can't hear us.
I was
It's muted
talking
on both
shit
ends.
and it didn't even come through.
Yep.
I said that's the face Justin makes when he doesn't get included on lobster onesies.
Yeah. Jeez.
One day, Justin, we're going to all show up on the podcast in our lobster onesies, and then you're going to feel alone.
But
That is not very nice.
Should have done that tonight. No, I'm just kidding.
But I like what you said, though, Jess, is the comparison piece of it. And even throwing in, parasocial relationships where, I mean, how many of any of the listeners or even you guys have said, oh, my friend, and you're talking about maybe someone you've had like 2 or 3 interactions with in a DM. You're like, yeah, my friend talked about this today. And you're like, they're not really my friend. But like the impact too on parasocial relationships, and getting even that validation back of a return, like someone responds to a comment, like your favorite creator responds to your comment or things like that. And, I think that those do have those own ramifications.
No, it does. Yeah, like 7-Eleven responded to my comment on Twitter, and now I literally think that every time I walk into a 7-Eleven, they like know me. No, I know they don't, but it just feels like I've had an interaction with 7-Eleven like none of y'all have. It feels like that weird connection. I'm messing with you, but no, I'm with you. I think the parasocial connection, it makes it. I don't know. I sometimes think it could help with loneliness, and then sometimes it actually reinforces it. Like I don't even know this person.
Well, I think that, can impact, if you have this parasocial relationship, and maybe you meet someone. So, right, you are commenting on all of Taylor Swift's content. You have a fan account made to her and all of this. And then you meet her. She has no
talking
idea.
about yourself?
No. But like, I'm thinking like my secret account. But like, then you meet her, but she doesn't know who you are. And even smaller creators, like let's not go as big as Taylor Swift, but like let's go like smaller, you have a creator who lives in your town and you run into them at Target and you're like, oh my God, I've sent you messages. I sent you a letter in your PO box, but they have no idea who you are. And in the opposite end, that can be really devastating for some people. Guys, I don't have a burner account for T Swift.
Yeah, you do.
No, I don't.
What's the name? T Swift Besties.
T Swift
1, 2, 3.
It's Fuck Joe 2020.
Not your average T Swift fan.
That's it.
Guys, I can't even show
This
you.
is Kristen's lonely, so she has to make a T Swift.
These are all my friendship bracelets from the concert. They're on my light now.
Did T Swift give those to you?
No, she
How does it
didn't.
work?
Okay. But I do have one that says hashtag by Joe, and I love it.
There's
Moving on.
not your average T Swift fan TikTok. Sorry, guys.
Thank you for the receipts, Jess. We needed
me.
to know.
There is not your
Fun fact,
average wife, so.
Fun fact, they only follow me. Moving on, because this is traumatizing, we're going to go on to talking about trauma and isolation. So Kara from Arizona asked, does trauma play a role in feelings of loneliness? If so, how? And then Caitlin also asked, could chronic loneliness or isolation be traumatic?
Yes and yes.
What about them could be traumatic?
Well, going off of can chronic loneliness, isolation be traumatic you brought up that show that I've literally never watched, so I'm not going to speak on it. But we do know just with, prisoners and things like that, when they're put into isolation, even after 72 hours, it really takes a toll on their mental health. But if you think of at the core of loneliness, lacking feeling like you're connected with one of other people, and you don't feel like your needs are getting met, or at least in the social realm, or you're desiring connections and they're not there, anything. Going back to our trauma episode and Justin and my long conversation, is everything trauma? Anything can be traumatic. And if you so deeply desire those connections and they're not there and your needs are not met, absolutely that can be traumatic and can take a toll on your mental health. It can further perpetuate or reinforce feeling lonely, isolating, withdrawing, etc.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of ways that trauma can hijack our social ability. One is it just takes you out of the moment. Like people who are constantly fighting trauma triggers, it's very hard to be present. And to have any decent level of social interaction, you have to be here. You have to be here in the now. You have to be able to listen to somebody, engage, have witty comebacks, which some of us have and some of us don't. I won't name names. But in other capacities, specific trauma can teach us something about who we are. And so if you've gone through different family trauma, if you're a survivor of abuse, it can make you just feel less than, or it can make you skeptical of people. And I know a lot of trauma survivors, that is it. Like, you're associating people in general from the specific interactions you've had because you've had to survive. Does it make sense? It makes sense. Does it also hold us back in life? It can. And both those things can be true.
How can trauma impact our feeling of loneliness?
I think it depends on the trauma that you've experienced.
I could even just think of when I even just think of vicarious trauma, like experiencing trauma alongside someone who's experiencing trauma, that could feel really lonely. I'm pulling from being an EMT. Just kind of feeling this sense of like, I've witnessed so much and I'm going to go home to my family and they have no idea what's going on. It just feels very isolating. And then to just be in your head and to have all these feelings and to be triggered by multiple things. And then to explain to your family, like, hey, I can't go to A, B, and C because of my work or because of my trauma. And they don't really get it. So it reinforces that feeling of like, am I the only one experiencing this? Even though I'm not. It feels like it. It's like a perceived loneliness in a way. And then when I think of people who experience criterion A trauma, trauma in real time, it does feel lonely because you're alone with your thoughts, you're alone with your triggers, your flashbacks, all those things, unless you experienced it alongside someone. It could feel really, really isolating to be in your head about those things all day.
Julie from Illinois asked, does having a difficulty being vulnerable contribute to loneliness? I think it can. I mean, a lot of vulnerability is allowing yourself to connect with someone on a deeper level than just talking about the weather. I mean, you can definitely connect with people talking about, surface level stuff, absolutely. But some of that more deep-seated connection, without being vulnerable, you're not going to really obtain, or it's going to be very one-sided. So someone is going to come to you and be vulnerable, and they're going to feel connected to you, but maybe you're not going to feel the same with them because of that fear.
Totally.
Now,
I would even argue too that if you're being vulnerable with someone and they're not being vulnerable back, that could be really lonely too. Absolutely. To not have that reciprocity. KBI, I know you and I talked about this last week, of that emotional reciprocity when it comes to connection, of like, if you're putting out all of this vulnerability and feelings and emotions and thoughts, and the other person is kind of like not feeling what you're feeling, but not really pulling the conversation and being an active participant, it could feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, or, oh, this feels weird.
Yeah. And a way I frame that to clients is exactly kind of along the lines you were saying, K10, is when you don't know a lot about a person, it's just really hard to connect with them. And it's like knowing surface level things, as KBI was saying, isn't truly knowing them. But it's a way that I try to coach people to be more vulnerable, is like when someone comes to you with something, with some sort of emotional undertone, like something that made them really frustrated, something that made them sad, or something they're just so excited about. And it's not to say it has to be the biggest emotion ever, but it just has emotional undertone. You now know them. Like if I was back in a group practice and someone came running in my office and they were just so stoked, oh my God, I got T-Swift tickets. I know them. And that might seem like, how vulnerable is that? But it is. It's you allowing someone to participate in your excitement, your joy, your interest. but it also is true in things that make you mad, pissed off, angry. And I know a lot of people are nodding their head. This is like classic job stuff, right? Where you complain about the boss, you complain about different factors, but it is a way to connect. Versus you can all think of those coworkers you have who like are almost like blank slate. And you're like, are you AI? Like, I don't know.
I know you're pissed that the water jug is not filled. Like, I know you're mad. We're all dehydrated. I know you're pissed. Like, just say it. Like,
just say it. Just say it. You thought we were getting donuts for this meeting, and we didn't. And muffins aren't donuts, so don't try to sell me a muffin.
Muffins are elite, though.
Donuts are way better.
They're not donuts.
I would definitely
Muffin
take
tops?
a muffin over a donut.
Muffin top?
What?
Oh, I don't even eat the whole muffin. I
don't eat donuts. Like,
You
it's a
see
very
the
rare
top?
occasion.
Yeah,
Wait,
because it's the
this is
best part of the
illegal.
muffin.
Wait, so you're gonna half-ass say, I like muffins, I only like half of them? That's not very unconditional love of you. Like,
Anyone said that about a donut? I like half a donut.
half of it.
I mean,
Some
I
people-
only eat plain donuts because I won't eat it if it has icing on it. So I would eat half a donut if it had icing on it.
You're the outlier. Icing or die. Like,
This is a dividing line in this group, by the way. We won't forget muffin versus donut. This will rage on.
that's it. I can't believe it's me and Justin. Me and Justin are never really aligned.
I know, it's the first time.
Yeah, first time, bestie.
on donuts. Like, let's like on donuts.
My blood
Donuts
sugar
versus muffins?
Dude, donuts are like. Do
coffee
you understand?
cake muffin with
Do you
some
understand?
crumbly brown sugar on
Yeah, the
top?
streusel on top of
Yeah.
a muffin.
That you
wait.
eat
That
half
shit
of?
does not slap.
Hold on. Hear me out, okay?
No.
Blueberry muffins are so good in the morning. I'm not having a blueberry muffin in the afternoon.
Why
I'm
not?
having a donut in the afternoon.
Why can't
it's
you
like
have a blueberry muffin in the afternoon? What is wrong
muffins.
about that?
Muffins are morning things.
So
like
are
that in my
donuts.
head. Like I just
So are donuts.
donuts,
Putting muffins
but donuts.
in a solid class and isolating them.
We are.
Okay, you're right. But I could have a donut at night and not feel weird. If I have a muffin at night, I'm like, ooh,
That's
I'm
what
breaking
makes
the
you
rules
feel-
here.
that-
Like I can't.
That's what
can't.
makes you feel weird.
I'm breaking the rules. I don't know. It's just weird. It's
Out of
like
all-
lock me up. I'm going
of
to
all the
jail. I
shit
ate a
that
muffin
you
at
do-
night. I can't.
Out of all the shit you do at night that I hear that you do, the thing that makes you feel weird is eating a muffin.
Is eating a muffin.
Yes. That's
I would much rather take Benadryl to go to sleep than eat a muffin before bed. I said it. I said
It's in the
it.
book.
Noted.
It's in the book.
Okay, I'm gonna remember that the next time that you snap me some weird chaotic shit that you're doing at 9 o'clock, and
It's
I'm
in the
like,
book.
what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, page 103. I would rather have Benadryl than eat a muffin.
I swear I shouldn't have said this on tape. Honestly, I'm gonna go down to this
I'm gonna make this into a clip and then attach her book too.
Well, I don't feel lonely because Justin is at least team donuts. So like we're
this
good.
is a poll. But after this episode, we're going to the polls, folks.
We're gonna win.
Oh, yeah.
Muffin or donut.
Muffins or donuts.
If you're eating a muffin at 8 p.m.,
No, it's weird. You can't tell me it's exciting. You can't tell me like at 8 p.m. you're like going for a muffin. Like
don't try me.
no.
What if it's like
there's
a
muff-
chocolate muffin and it's like
No.
dessert?
You like the double chocolate chump? It's like a dessert.
I mean, it kind. Okay. We're hitting a gray area. Yeah.
I'm still, as you're unwrapping that muffin at 8 p.m. watching your little reality show, I'm judging harshly.
I hope so because I shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean? Like,
So it's the person who orders
shouldn't-
Taco Bell at 10 o'clock at night.
I just think if that's a Boston cream, I'm like, ooh, okay.
Boston cream all day and all night. I would wake up at 2 a.m. to eat a Boston cream donut.
Of course.
Ew.
Wake up to eat a muffin? I'm not doing that.
That's so gross. So
How
gross.
did we get here? I'm sorry.
Anyway,
Her transition was
That's such a good transition. Anywho,
let's get back to the questions because that's what they're here. That's what our group members are here for, not to hear us discourse over.
I feel like we're back. The past couple of episodes, we haven't had like. Okay, go, hurry, go, because I can't stop.
So let's see what Robin from Iowa has to say.
Robin, let's go.
I'm not laughing at the question. I'm laughing at the transition to what this question is. Okay. Robin, we're going to pull it together for you. How can I encourage my 73-year-old mom to get out and meet people? She's an introvert. She lives in Florida, so I usually see her 2 to 3 times per year. She is painfully lonely, yet she doesn't really like people.
Justin's going to go hang out with her. She's in Florida.
I'm bringing a box of donuts and we're hanging out.
Or what if she's a muffin person?
Yeah, she might
Ain't
not
nobody
hang out.
rolling up with a box
Sorry,
of
moms.
muffins. Nope.
I think I will say, in a serious note, unlike some other people on this podcast,
You're the most least serious person ever.
I was
Like,
about to
should
say,
someone else answer? Or like, this is what KVI is saying it's bad.
I think it goes back to kind of, we touched upon this of like, what is an interest that she has, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, take a pottery class if that's something that she's interested in. Like maybe doing something like that of like starting something small to start some of that in a common interest, because you're going to go to that pottery class if your mom likes pottery, talking about pottery.
True.
Like, you're not going to go to the pottery class and innately talk about pickleball
Or donuts.
or donuts.
Or donuts. I even think like Meetup is a good option too. They have meetups based on like age range, age group, interest, you know, all that stuff. And I think it's just a really, really great way to connect. Whenever I move to different states, I do that, or Bumble BFF. And I actually had a client who did this, a couple of clients who are in their older age, and they went on Meetup and they met like the coolest people. Like, it was amazing. And I was shocked. I was like, damn, there's people out there who are doing the same stuff as you. That's amazing, you know?
And I don't know if this is just a Maine thing. I don't know if this is in other states, but in Maine, there are a lot of adult education classes that are not like getting your GED. It's like I took a sewing class. I took a workout class through adult ed. So maybe look into like your local adult eds and see if there's maybe different classes that, like, again, I took a sewing 101 class and I learned how to make a skirt. Like,
It's pretty cool.
Just because I had moved to Maine, I didn't really have friends outside of grad school. And I was like, let's make friends in sewing 101.
I like it.
I'm going to take a different approach to this question. Because Robin, you say she's painfully lonely, but she doesn't like people. You want to encourage her. Like, does she want to feel less lonely? Or like, how do you know she's painfully lonely? Like, is she calling you complaining that she's lonely, but not taking steps? That's one thing. Or do you just worry for your mom that she is lonely and you would like to see her? Because if she's not wanting to go out and meet people, if she's content with where she is, it's probably going to be harder. But if she's not content, like if she's calling you and saying, oh my gosh, I have no friends, da, 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 da. Like, and this is a very like therapist thing to say, but like asking her like what she would like her social connections to look like. You know, what does not looking lonely look like to you? What are you willing to do? Because you're going to get more buy-in if it's more of your mom's idea. The other thing, more of like a different way to meet up. I don't know if she lives in a neighborhood, if she lives in like apartment complex, a 55 plus community, things like that. But if there's like things in her neighborhood, so she doesn't even have to go far and she can like go home if she's like done with people, that might be another option. Cause I know like a lot of neighborhoods like do things, like community activities.
Right. I like that take though. I didn't even think about that. Jess coming in from the other side. Okay, so we have time for one more question. Let's see, which one do we want to do? Alini from New Jersey asks, how do I discuss the topic of loneliness during my therapy session? K10 just comes back with a cat.
Yeah.
I just got distracted by the cat she was carrying.
Sorry, I literally have a zoo in my house. I have so many animals, and they're all just like in a mood right now. Like I have to separate them.
So how would we discuss loneliness in therapy?
I know we say this a lot when it comes to these sorts of questions of like, there's not a wrong way to bring it up. Like if a client just started in the session, it was just like, I feel lonely. Like I'm just instantly as a therapist, I'm curious about that. Oh yeah. How often do you feel lonely? When did the loneliness first start? Was there a time you didn't feel lonely anymore? What are the moments maybe in more recent time where you're like, oh my gosh, I felt connected. Like as a therapist, if you just give me a little, I can run with it. And I have a bunch of questions for you because therapists usually are just naturally curious people, but we can't tell you how you feel. So that's why I just encourage you, if you can just name what you're feeling, and you got, hopefully loneliness is the best word that describes what your experience is, handing that to your therapist should have a lot of curiosities about that.
Yeah. Just kidding. We actually have more time for one more.
Yes.
Maddie from Chicago asks, how do you deal with loneliness isolation as a therapist?
Consultation with other professionals.
Make a podcast with your therapist besties.
Therapist besties. Yep. I really love consulting, and I think I underestimated the power of it until I got into private practice. Because when I worked at the VA, there were people everywhere. I could just walk into people's offices. You know, you're on the same team, you're in the same unit or something. In private practice, you're just here, you know? So I have a bunch of people from grad school, a bunch of people from my old jobs that we keep in contact with. And it's really, really helpful because if you're kind of stuck with the client or you just kind of want to talk about your day without giving away client information, it could really feel like, oh, we're working together. And I know a couple of my friends from social media who are therapists, sometimes we'll get on FaceTime and just body double and just do our notes together because notes is not my strong point. And I don't like doing them alone. So I'll like text or call or FaceTime. And sometimes that helps with my loneliness.
Except she won't answer my FaceTime.
When I'm in session, you always call me when I'm in session. Like I'm obviously not answering.
I feel like it's just convenient that you're always in session when I call.
Listen, I don't know how many times we have to remind you that K10 is not your therapist.
Thank you. Like I am booked up to the brim. Like
I pay her in my friendship. Okay.
No, I do miss you. We have to schedule a FaceTime. So, all right, y'all. I think we've come to an end today. So our time has come to an end. So please rate, like, and subscribe and share with someone who might benefit from learning more about loneliness and what it's like to be alone from a mental health perspective. But before we go, we leave you with this reflection question. How would you help a friend who's experiencing loneliness? Head over to our Instagram and respond and share your thoughts. And we'll see you next week in group therapy.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.